Well, we're going to get started on the topic of angels. I said if I could find at least 10 people that wanted to take this class, that I would go ahead and teach it. And so I'm going to start today. Now, if I already put on my Facebook page a kind of an introduction to the need to study angels and some of the benefits that it can do for you in studying it. But today what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the big picture, where we're headed, and show you how we form our systematic theology on angels so that we do not make mistakes or fall into lies of the devil or fall into error or bad doctrine. Okay? I'm going to break it down for you so that you can easily follow it along. First of all, let me just show you here on the whiteboard here. This circle represents all the created angels, and when I get to the point of origin, I'm going to go into a lot of detail as to how they were created, the different classification of angels, what are they like, are we going to judge them someday? Where did they reside? What is their destiny? And you can kind of see over here on the left-hand side, today we're going to look at the meaning. What does angels mean? Their existence, how many times it's talked about in the Bible, their nature, classification, ministry, what is it that they're doing? And what is their eventual destiny? So we're going to talk a lot about angels. But let me start off by telling you two stories. Okay, the first story was told by Chuck Swindoll. He was a very pretty popular pastor. He was president of Dallas Theological Seminary for a while I went to school. Now has a church up in North Dallas. I think he's retired now. But he tells a story of a missionary that was home on furlough. And he was traveling from church to church by his car. Well, late one rainy evening, facing a long drive, a lonely night, he asked the Lord to help him stay awake. As you can imagine what that's like. Okay, and to make it safely to the next place where he was going to be able to minister. A few minutes later, as it's pouring down rain outside, he saw a man off to the side, and he was thumbing a ride. So, although he never picked up hitchhikers, he felt sorry for the man, and he pulled over and offered the man a lift. Well, as the two of them began the visit, the missionary was thrilled to discover that the stranger was a believer, and they had many mutual friends engaged in the Lord's work. In fact, they were so engaged in conversation that the time passed really fast. Okay, so the time came where the man wanted to get off, but before saying goodbye, the missionary invited the stranger he had picked up if he would like to get some coffee at a roadside cafe. So they went in, got some coffee, ordered 2 cups, and then they parted, went goodbye. Well, the missionary left. And as he was leaving, he said, oh, man, I forgot. Let me go back and get his phone number because I want to stay in contact with him. So the rain had stopped by now, and a bright sun was coming out. And so a couple minutes, he went back down the road, and he went back to the little cafe where he ordered the coffee. And there wasn't anybody there. So he asked the cook, do you know where the guy that I was talking to at the table, where he went? He says, no, there wasn't anybody there that you were talking to. He says, I wondered why you ordered 2 cups of coffee. Then he went to the table where he was drinking the coffee, and there was his cup, the one he was drinking, and the other cup still filled with coffee. He got back in his car and he started driving, and he was just utterly amazed. And then he got to remember, when I picked that guy up off the road and it was pouring down rain, he was completely dry. And it just dawned on him that that had happened. There's no doubt that he probably was entertained by an angel. There's another story about a pilot during World War II who was on a ship that exploded. He managed to fall off the ship and get onto some wood and raft, and he was out at sea by himself for days and days and days, and he was starving to death. He was thirsty. And he was praying that God would help him. And just then, his name was Rickenbacker. He tells a story many years later that out of nowhere, as he was praying, a seagull came and landed on his head. He grabbed it and ate it and kept him alive long enough until he could be rescued. There's no doubt in his mind, as he tells the story later, that God, in answer to his prayer, had sent that seagull there, probably through the means of an angel. I have my own stories to tell. One in particular, I'll never forget. I was driving with my Aunt Linda and her kids. We were going to a mission conference, and her husband was driving the car. Back then it was kind of like a station wagon that we were in. I was in the back seat and looking at a truck in front of us. An axle literally flew out of the back of his pickup and was coming right at our windshield. There was nowhere to go to the left, nowhere to go to the right, and I'm telling you, that axle defied gravity. It went down, and then it went up and over our station wagon. And we were dumbstruck. We couldn't talk. We could hardly say anything. What happened? What was that? You know? And I've had many other kind of experiences, but angels are a reality. They do exist. Okay? And that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today. First of all, the word angels, the word angels in the Hebrew is the word malak. In the Greek, it's the word angelos. They both mean the same thing, messenger. But as we're going to see when we go into the different nature of angels and some of their ministry, they do more than just bring messages like to Daniel or to the various ones in the Old Testament and New Testament where they brought messages. And I'm going to go through all that. But they're not only messengers, they're transporters. Okay, they're mighty warriors. They do a lot of things that a lot of people are not aware of. Okay, the existence of angels is mentioned 108 times in the Old Testament and 165 in the New Testament. Now, there are a lot of skeptics out there. People, science. If I can't see it, I don't believe it. They don't believe in dualism, a spiritual world. Okay? And they tend to ridicule people that talk about angels, and they'll make fun of them, or they'll come up with silly cartoons and caricatures of what they think angels should look like, both fallen and unfallen angels. And what we're going to do is we take 108, that's what, 273 passages in the Bible. From those passages, we form, listen to me carefully, our doctrine of angelology. We begin to notice as we go through all those passages, there's two major categories. There are fallen angels over here and unfallen angels. Fallen angels are Satan and all those angelic beings that went in rebellion and followed Satan during a specific time before the creation of the earth. Okay? Angels are created beings. We're going to see that when we talk about origin, just like we are. Okay? They're like us in that they have personality. They have intellect, will, and emotion. They also had a point in time where they had to make a decision for salvation, for God or against God. All the fallen angels went against. It was a one-time act, not like us where people get saved different times and all that. The angels had a one-time point where they could either follow God and remain in that state unfallen, or not follow God and remain in a fallen state and sinful and full of hate, pride, and every wicked thing imaginable. We're going to get into fallen angels in the second part of this teaching. The first part, we're going to talk about unfallen angels, okay? So if you want the big picture, here is the outline that we're going to go, okay? Meaning, the existence, we're going to talk about the existence. We're going to talk about the origin, the nature, the classification, ministry, and destiny. In the Old Testament, if you'll see here, we're going to see that the existence of angels is proven in the Pentateuch. The Pentateuch is the first 5 books of the Bible. Then in the historical books of the Old Testament, then in the prophetic books like Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, then in the poetic books, books of poetry, Proverbs, Psalm, Ecclesiastes. Then we're going to look in the New Testament and the Gospels, what it all said about angels, the book of Acts, all the written letters that Paul and Peter and them wrote, the epistles, in the book of Revelation, and finally we're going to look at what Jesus said about angels. Okay, so here's what happens. We'll make this really simple to you. So you have all this collection of information in the Bible that talks about angels. Scholars and Bible students, what they do is they take that whole collection and that embodiment of truth, they organize it to have a systematic, clear understanding of what God is telling us about these created beings called angels, which we will someday judge, believe it or not. Okay? That's how you come up with angelology, a doctrine of angelology, so that you can know the truth and not fall into so much stuff that is out there. Taught by Christians, taught by pastors, taught by the occult, taught by false religions, all this different false stuff, you know, and even people that say, no, they don't exist. They're Martians or aliens or all these other things that are being said out there. So we're going to look at to what the Bible says and see it in an organized fashion so that you can have a clear understanding of what the whole thing of angels is. You know, I'll be honest with you. This particular study, especially when it gets in the area of fallen angels, freed me so much. It gave me so much freedom, you know, that I can't even begin to tell you how relief I was. So, and not only that, the comfort of knowing that God has angels watching over us, but also knowing that we're going to be accountable because someday we're going to judge them. Okay, so let me just get you started here. Okay, angels in the Old Testament. You have the book of Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible. Okay. In the Pentateuch, we have angels as being introduced to Adam and Eve. Satan appeared as a serpent and to Adam and Eve. And it says in Genesis 3:24, he drove the man out, and at the east of the Garden of Eden, he stationed a cherubim, which we're going to find is a higher form of angels, okay, like a ranking of angels. and the flaming sword which turned every direction to guard the way of the tree fall. So right at the beginning, in the Garden of Eden, after Adam and Eve sinned, here we see angels. And God placed this angel. And by the way, the description of angels is a lot different than what you'll see in movies or in books or, the kind of Hollywood show and productions and all that. They don't need wings to fly, but they're a beautiful creation. So he appeared. He also appeared in the Pentateuch to Hagar. Okay, and Hagar is confronted by the angel of Jehovah 2 different times. Now, let me tell you something here real quick. A theophany. Learn that word. Theophany. A theophany is a pre-incarnate Christ appearing as a man in the Old Testament. Theophany and an angel often are hard to distinguish. So sometimes when it talks about an angel of the Lord, when it talks here, the angel of Jehovah, it could be talking about a theophany, the pre-incarnate Christ. So we have to make that clear, okay? So when he also appeared to Abraham in Genesis 18. In fact, you see there in Genesis 18, Abraham was actually conversing with 2 angels. And he was sitting down and eating with them. Wouldn't that have been neat? How would you have liked to have done that? Hey, man, here, come here. Tortillas and beans and enchiladas, and let's have dinner. There were 2 angels. And Abraham actually had the opportunity. You might have done it and not been aware of it. Okay? The angels appeared to Lot, if you can remember, in Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot was rescued and his family, except for his wife, who turned back and turned into a pillar of salt because of the great outcry that was going up to heaven of how evil and immoral Sodom and Gomorrah had become, much like the United States, the whole world, in fact. And God was grieved, and he was going to destroy this whole city. But fortunately for Abraham, he prayed, and God relented until he was able to get Lot and the majority of his family out of there. But then they destroyed that city. But Lot actually had 2 angels stay at his house. The people of Sodom and Gomorrah were so wicked that they wanted to have sex with these angels. In order to appease them, Lot had to bring out his daughters and tell them, here, have my daughters, do whatever you want with her, but don't touch these men. Okay, can you imagine that? Okay, the angels also appeared to Moses. First, pretty sure it's a theophany in the burning bush. As you remember when Moses went up to receive the 10 commandments of the law. And it says in Exodus 3:2, and the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. And the angel of God, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from before them and stood behind them. Behold, I'm going to send an angel before you and guard you along the way, and to bring you from the place which I have prepared. So as they were going, God was sending angels to escort them and to guide them and to provide for them. Angel also appeared to Balaam. It's hilarious. God dealt with the false prophet of Balaam. If you remember the story, Balaam was so out of his head that God caused this donkey to speak like a human being to Balaam, and Balaam actually had a conversation with him because he was mad. So we see in the Pentateuch that angels appeared to a number of different people in the first 5 books of the Bible, from the beginning when Adam and Eve, and then all the way to Balaam, Moses, and so on. Now, the next time I talk to you, we're going to get into the historical books, into the historical books. Then we'll get into prophetic books and poetic. This is the Old Testament where it talks about the existence of angels, okay? Then we're going to talk about in the New Testament. And through that, you're going to be seeing classifications, names like cherubim, and you're going to see some of the duties that they perform and so forth. And from that, you can establish a pretty sound mind as to what angels are all about, what they do, and the ones that are probably watching you right now. Probably got one. There's one right here behind my whiteboard. Okay, you think I'm kidding, don't you? Okay, just because we don't see them doesn't mean that they're not real and they're not there. That's what this whole thing's about. They exist. They exist in your life. They exist in my life. They're messengers from God. They're here to watch over us, to give us insight, to guide us, to lead us, to protect us, and to eventually bring us home to the Lord Jesus Christ. Okay, I'll see you again later. Bye-bye.